let's open the open session of the Auckland Transport Board for the 26th of August. I see I've got all my board members, including Nicole. So let's start by having our opening karakia. I ask you to lead that, Tim.
Hi, kia ora, Chair. Just before we open with karakia, I just wanted to seek your support to do just that, open with karakia, and perhaps just to have a brief acknowledgement of the passing of Sir Michael. And maybe an opportunity for some of the board members and others who are present just to perhaps share a few thoughts before we get into the board meeting proper, if that's okay with you.
Yes, that would be pretty suitable. Thank you.
Bye. I'm just going to bring up the karakia. I'm using several devices which don't all sync at the same time. Bear with me for a moment, please.
Rakataka.
I'll let you lead, Chair, if that's okay.
We're in your hands, Jim.
Okay, thank you. Given the recent passing of Sir Michael, I thought I'd start with a more formal karakia to acknowledge him, and then just a mihi, and then pass back to you, Chair, to share any thoughts about his passing, and then perhaps open it up for anyone else. So with your support, kenoi tātou. Mai e te tipua, mai e te tawhito, mai e te kauhi o Ngāriki, mai e te tawhiwhi atu ki ngā atua. Ui, ka tikina te Māori ko te Māori ahu noho mai. Ki runga ki nei taura, ki runga ki nei tauira. Kia tau te Māori ki runga ki nei tama. He tikina no te whaioroa tāne te waioroa. Tēnei te matatau ki eke, whakatū tārewa ki te rangi, uhi, wero, tau mai te Māori, haumi e hui e tā ki e. Ina tata nei, kua hinga te tōtara i te wao nui a tāne. E te rangatira tā Michael, takuto mai, takuto mai, takuto mai. Takuto i roto i a tāne whakapiripiri, takuto mai, moi mai, moi mai rā. E te rangatira tā Michael, ka nui te aroha mū, ko wehi atu nei i a mātukato i tēnei wā. Haere, haere, haere atu rā ki te ao o tūpuna i tēnei wā. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Thank you, Chair and Board. That was just an acknowledgement to Sir Michael and his recent passing. As we all know, he's a long time serving member of this board, and also and other boards that some of us are on. For myself, it was the Lakes DHB board, and I know Mary Jane, he was the former chair of the Earthquake Commission as well. And I'm sure others amongst us have had other dealings with Sir Michael as well. So I just want to acknowledge him. A great tōtara has fallen in the forest of Tāne, and we ask Tāne to embrace him as he lays in peace, acknowledging all of the condolences and messages of aroha that have been extended to his whānau pani or bereaved family at this time. So thank you very much, and Sir Michael, go well.
Thank you, Jim. Yes, I would also like to acknowledge the passing of Sir Michael. I was not fortunate enough to serve with him. Basically, his term ended as mine started. But I know from everything that everybody has said what a huge contribution he made to not only New Zealand, but also Auckland Transport. And I did notice a lot of comments about what fun and what a wicked sense of humour he had. And I'm sure that's missed around the board table just as much as his great wisdom. And he's obviously left a huge legacy for New Zealand, but from our perspective, he was hugely important, actually created that I know, talking with other people, and we can be assured that we will not be able to. And there are just some people who are like that, and he was definitely an original. So perhaps I could, any other board members would like to share a tribute to him.
Thanks, Adrian. I think it was just at the end of his last meeting at Auckland Transport, Michael said to me that Auckland Transport is a far, far better organisation than the council and the public give it credit for. So we have lost a real friend and a real ally.
Thank you. Did anybody else want to make any comments? Okay, right. Well, let's now move on to the agenda proper. We have apologies from Councillor Darby and Councillor Cadmore. And so just a couple of comments from me. I was just going through my papers because I have to do some filing since I'm at home a lot currently. And the first paper was a strategic outlook for Auckland Transport in a post-COVID world, dated June 2020. And I'm going to go back and read that historical document with interest. But we're obviously in an extremely serious situation, and it has been a long time since we've all had to attend a board meeting by Teams and all be at home. And I'd like to start by acknowledging from an AT perspective, particularly our AT frontline workers, of whom there are a lot out there in the network currently keeping the place operating, from the Transport Operating Centre, where they physically have to be there at the centre working together, through to our transport officers and other staff who are just making sure that our system's working, and also obviously our really important contract partners. And it's a it's a very sobering and humbling thing, knowing the characteristics of the Delta virus, and knowing how many of our frontline officers remain to be vaccinated or have only just started to get vaccinated. And I very, very humbly acknowledge the service and what they're doing for all of us. And I'm sure that we are trying to ensure, and they are trying to ensure, they keep safe. But nevertheless, there's no question we're dealing with, I think it's one of our leading epidemiologists termed it almost like a new virus in terms of its characteristics. So look, we've had some briefing on how AT is managing this from a practical perspective, and it's not very good to have to say we're quite practiced at this, but nevertheless, things are not the same as they were this time last year. A lot of things have changed, and not just our practice, but actually a lot of our contributing environment. We will have an opportunity as a whole community, council family, and also AT, but not today, to think, what is this, where's this taking us as an organisation, as a transport system? So we will need to reflect, because I think there's been just another shift of the dial in terms of the challenge that we have going forward. Now, are there any late items for general business?
No.
Okay. If you folk could note that if you do use the chat, the chat conversation line, which I don't recommend that you particularly do, but there might be a reason why you do that. It's all public, okay? So just be aware that's part of the public record. And so if we could now move to the interest register, are there any changes in interests?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
And are there any issues on today's agenda which are not already declared and being appropriately managed?
No.
No. Okay, thank you. We've got the minutes of the meeting of the 29th of July. Are there any changes to those minutes?
No.
Okay, so the board can accept those as a true and correct record of the meeting. Now we can sign those.
Yes.
Thank you. Right, and then we've got our action register. Right, we've got two things, which are one's on the agenda today, I think, which is the resource management. In fact, there was a note out to the board, as I recall, on the water reforms. Am I correct on that?
That's right, Madam Chair. Both of those actions are completed.
Yes, thank you. Okay, let's move on now to the main item on the agenda, which is the signs bylaw proposal. I'm sorry, there are no formal letters, so let's move on to the signs bylaw proposal. And perhaps we did have two board members. I think Darren and Kylie were on the council committee. Did you want to make any opening remarks before I turn over to the executive?
I think, Adrian, I think it would be good to go to the executive. I just did want to note that our last engagement with Darren and I with the working group was mid-April, and post that meeting we as a board approved the signage bylaw review structure of the new bylaw in April 2021. So since then we haven't been engaged with the working group, so executive would be good.
Okay, thank you. Who's going to lead this?
Thank you. Tēnā koutou tātua. My name's Terry Segru. I'm the Transport Controls team leader. Roger is not available to join us today, and so he's asked for staff to introduce this matter. I have with me Joanne Rua, Public Law Counsel for AT, and also staff from the council team involved with the producing of the bylaw. This report recommends that the board endorse the statement of proposal for the New Auckland Council and AT signs bylaw and adopts it for public consultation. It also asks that you appoint members of the board to be on the bylaw panel that will hear the public feedback, deliberate on the matters and make recommendations back to the council governing body and to the rest of the board. This proposal is the result of the work that's been done and the suggestions made by the Regulatory Standards Committee and the AT Board about the review of the current signage bylaw. The proposed new bylaw keeps generally the same content and intent and scope as the current rules, but the main changes include combining what's currently two separate bylaws, the election signs bylaw and the signage bylaw, into a single bylaw, reintroducing a 9-week period for the display of election signs, increasing the area where portable signs, sandwich board type style, are prohibited so that it covers the entire city centre zone. It also intends to make the bylaw more consistent with the style of the drafting of the other council bylaws, with the intent that it's easier to understand and that we're more aligned with the council's unitary plan. On a separate note, the proposal treats the current rules as a starting point, and it's an expectation that during consultation people will make suggestions, and the bylaws panel will be free to consider the scope of those changes depending on the amount of comment received from the public on those rules. The proposal also includes the option for people to make comment on advertising at off-licence alcohol outlets. This is not a matter that's directly covered by the bylaw, but it's expected that if we were to, have a consultation about signage, we'll almost certainly receive comment on this, and Council is running a separate process and investigation at the moment into alcohol advertising. So it made sense to, specifically allow this within this consultation. But the bylaws panel itself won't be considering the feedback from this matter. In terms of the next steps, once the board, if you approve this statement proposal for going forward, and the council governing body does the same later this afternoon or later this morning, then the public consultation is scheduled to start on the 15th of October and run through to the 17th of October. Then local board views and the feedback of the bylaws panel will deliberate early in the new year, and the governing body in Auckland Transport will make the final decision on the bylaw in April next year. In closing, it's joined here by members of the team involved in the drafting of this, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. Thank you, Terry. Are there any questions or comments? Abby.
Terry, are you satisfied that the bylaw as drafted is future-proofed? When I read it, I was kind of turning my mind to the way our streets will be being used in 5, 10, 15 years as we increasingly successful in getting people to shift modes, and in particular pedestrian and cycling and micromobility. And I know that there's no reference to either cycling or micromobility in any of the language. It might be included in definitions of traffic or the like, but just interested to understand if you think we've done the work to make sure that these signs, some of which are allowed in footpaths, allow us to future-proof.
I do think that the bylaw won't cause us any problem in that regard. It's clear that the bylaw doesn't affect our ability as the road controlling authority to install and erect traffic control devices under our transport powers, and so the signage directed at pedestrians and micromobility will generally fall within that category, and so our power as the road controlling authority will remain separate from the bylaw. So and other type of things, like when we put down, as we have done sometimes in the past, a stencil on the ground saying this is a good place to park scooters, that type of thing would be within our power to authorise.
I think part of what I was wondering is, if we get more people using footpaths, and there's still a sort of enabling environment for signs in those areas rather than the road, for instance, whether we've got enough ability to make sure we can prioritise pedestrian traffic over signs if that became an issue in areas outside of the central city. It's a fairly specific point, but what would be useful is for us to make sure that there aren't structural barriers to the mode shift we're trying to create, right? And more footpath usage is one outcome I guess we're hoping to achieve.
I definitely think that our power over the sandwich board type signage that would get in the way directly of pedestrians and mobility users is absolute. We have the ability to say that, and we only allow them under the proposals in the bylaw, on wider footpaths to start with, and there remains the ability to prohibit them completely from a footpath. And so, and that is why the proposal extends the ban on sandwich board type style signs throughout the city centre, and the ability exists to make that go wider. So we would be able to do that in response to an uptake of micromobility and pedestrians in an area if it was required.
Great, thanks, Terry.
Other questions?
Yeah, Wayne Donnelly here, Terry. Yeah, thanks for the presentation and the paper. Do you foresee that alcohol outlet advertising will eventually come under this bylaw, or is it going to remain separate?
The approach that's been taken has been to not use this bylaw to get into the details of specific signage other than brothel signage, because that's a particular power under the Prostitution Reform Act. All of the other signage, it's kind of agnostic about what's on the sign. But I guess that is a choice that could be reconsidered in the future. I don't think that the bylaw making powers prevents us from going down that route. I just don't think it's been seen as a thing that either us or councillors wanted to use the bylaw for to date. But
so this bylaw will still control the location of signs, but not the content. Is that what you think? Okay.
Yes, generally, yeah. The location and the physical elements of where they're obstructing sight lines and making sure they don't fall down and injure people in that type of way.
And the reference in here to Entrust, is that the Energy Trust?
Yes, it's a slightly bizarre thing that is a holdover from the Auckland City Council election signs bylaw regime, that the predecessor to Entrust, which was predominant in the Auckland City Council area, they were specifically covered by that election signs bylaw and were allowed to have the election signs covered by it. It's just seen as a little bit unnecessary now in a region-wide bylaw to have a particular allowance for one single energy trust. We don't have the election signs bylaw applying to all sorts of other trusts. It doesn't, or to other major organisations, so the Fonterra board or the school board elections. So that the Entrust thing was a slightly unusual holdover, which I think was just a good time to quietly let that slip away.
Thank you.
Kylie.
Thank you, Terry. Just in terms of the proposed public consultation timing, how have you considered possible flexibility that may be required given the current situation that we are in, to ensure that we're consulting in the most meaningful way that we can and it's transparent?
Oh, I would have to say I don't know that we've particularly given that much thought. Obviously, we were preparing all this back, a couple of weeks ago, and before, when we thought the world was quite different in New Zealand. Yeah, but I think that the nature of what is proposed should not be unduly affected by the lockdown situation. I think that it is going to run for at least a calendar month. I guess that if lockdown was still proceeding during that time period, we might want to reconsider it and extend it further. I'd be open to whether many of my colleagues from the council team have any thoughts on that.
I was just going to say our council friends can probably assist, but it does have to be a special consultative procedure because it is a bylaw proposal. In the lockdown last year, there was some legislation passed to relax the rules around special consultative procedures, which has since expired. But it's likely if this, level 4, level 3 continues, that similar legislation will be passed to allow a relaxation of the special consultative procedure rules. So maybe our council friends, given that council will be leading primarily the consultation, might be able to add some comments to that.
Hi, it's Steve Hickey here, Policy Advisor with the Council. Yes, I'd just like to start by agreeing with Terry and Joanne about all of the wider context, and just to say that while we're still developing the plan, and obviously there are COVID contingency plans, the current main components of it. Oh, by the way, can I just check that you can hear me clearly?
Yes. Yep.
The current main components are an online and offline feedback form. a stakeholder day or 2 days. It's currently planned to be a mix of virtual and in-person, so I could easily transfer to virtual. And we have also previously, during the previous lockdown, had online Have Your Say events, so public consultation events. Now, typically, we tend to plan for our Have Your Say events to be later on in the consultation period so that people can get adequate notification about them. So, yeah, we're still developing the contingency plan. The current estimates I read this morning are that the lockdown could last for up to a month. That would still probably mean it could be some in-person time, but I just want to assure you that there is flexibility for us to handle the current situation.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, do I have Wally wanting to make some comment?
Thanks, Adrian. Yeah, look, Steve covered it off really well, but it's probably a broader issue for a lot of consultations that we're about to get underway. ELT is actually meeting tomorrow to talk through the forward program, including the speed limits or proposed speed limits bylaw, which was due to go live next week. So we're looking at pausing or rescheduling a number of those. For, I mean, really practical reasons. For example, you can't get anything printed under level 3 or 4, and you can't get things delivered. And moving everything to online, of course, means that there are some communities that there's a digital kind of divide, really, which doesn't give them the opportunity to engage. So it's definitely on our radar, board, and we'll come back to you with a recommended approach in the next day or two.
Okay. Wayne.
Those are my answer. No, I've finished. Well, I suppose my only other question is that the local boards would obviously be a key group to talk to, and I assume that's already planned for anyway.
Yes, that's definitely part of the council's plan to ensure that the local boards are looped into this. They do often have a large amount of interest in the signage bylaw because it's things that are very real to the members of their communities, and the election signs are very real to them.
Okay. Okay, look, we've got, I think that's all the questions that have been answered satisfactorily. Understanding you'll need to have a look at the practicalities of consultation issues in our current circumstance, and no doubt make the right decision there. I'm just wondering if we need to have, does the proposed method of public consultation need to be approved by the board, or can we delegate that to the executive? That's my only question. Terry.
I'm not sure that the board needs to give a direct statement about the style of the consultation. I think that it's enough that the statement proposal is adopted and the authority is given to go ahead with the consultation, and then we will have to, as Wally points out, we'll have to work out what we can do about the lack of printing ability and things like that, and that may lead to a delay in the start.
And can I ask, Darren and Kylie prepared to continue with the completion of this process?
Yep, happy to.
So, so if we could have that part of the resolution actually just amended to include Kylie Clegg and Darren Linton. So with that change, is the board happy to approve the recommendation as set out in the agenda?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
See lots of thumbs. Thank you very much. So thank you for all the work on that, and also obviously to our board members who are doing that for us. If we could, is there any general business?
Thank you.
No, okay. Right, we've the next meeting, scheduled meeting, open meeting of the AT board is on the 30th of September. 2021. And obviously, if needed, we'll have one earlier if circumstances require. So that completes the the open meeting of AT.